Hello, folks, and we have some spicy news for you today. You know, BlackRock bought $10 million worth of Bitcoin to fund their ETF, but that is nowhere near enough. Bitwise, which is a much smaller entity, wants to buy 20 times as much to seed their ETF. How do I know? Well, we have news right here. And as you can see, Bitwise might buy $200 million worth of Bitcoin, actually will buy that much to seed their ETF. Bitwise amended their filing to say that it will buy $200 million, far more than BlackRock's $10 million, because $10 million, not enough for demand. So Blank has indicated an interest in purchasing an aggregate of up to $200 million of shares in this offering from authorized participants or in the marketplace through broker dealers. Blank is an unknown entity. Obviously, they don't want to be known. They have like some kind of NDA or something, but they've indicated interest in $200 million in shares of Bitcoin ETFs. They add a disclaimer that because indications of interest are not binding or commitments to this purchase, this potential customer could determine to purchase more, fewer, or no shares. So it's not quite as binding as what BlackRock is doing, but it's 20 times more. And BlackRock is probably going to try to sell more as well. And remember, Bitwise is one of the many ETFs out there. There's like a dozen of them. So if they all determine to like buy something like Bitwise, it could result in $2 billion of Bitcoin buys within the first few weeks of the ETF batch of ETFs going through. Now, I don't know how many ETFs are going to be approved on the first batch, but all these companies doing seeding pretty much right away pretty much tells me that it's going to pass. They know it's probably going to pass. And it could be $1 billion or more within the next week or two of Bitcoin buys. Now, regardless of how much people try to short the ETF after it comes out, which I wouldn't do because I think it's suicide, this will actually push it up. Bitwise did not state who its authorized participants are. We know for some of them it's going to be like JP Morgan and others. So big institutions, big banks, screw what Jamie Dimon said because JP Morgan is participating as well. So the thing is, like, we know there's going to be billions of dollars coming into Bitcoin. Fidelity, on the other hand, is the latest to file to include authorized participant Jane Street. So we know that Jane Street and JP Morgan are both there. And I do think BlackRock is going to buy a lot more in a hurry, if nothing else, to compete with Bitwise and how much they're actually selling. Remember, these guys don't operate in a vacuum. They all compete with each other, and BlackRock's going to be feeling pretty big competitive pressure to match Bitwise's sales because they don't want their ETF getting left behind. So BlackRock is going to buy on January 3rd, 10 million. And I think Bitwise is going to follow very, very shortly afterward, if not like right before they actually approve the ETF. So this ETF sell-off that we're all talking about may not actually happen because, if there's millions and millions of dollars worth of buys around the time of the approval or right after the approval, there's very little way it can actually go down. In fact, if that happens, it's more likely to go up somewhere between the 3rd and the 10th. Now, BlackRock does have a 10 million buy on the 3rd. I don't think that should affect the markets too much, but it could make it go up to like 44, 45 or something. And of course, if all the other BTC applicants are buying on that date, January 3rd could be the day that it actually goes up because these companies are actually buying at that point. 10 million isn't going to affect it, but if you have a couple $100 million worth of buys, it definitely could affect it on January 3rd. And that does make sense. It's like 2 days after people come back from the new year. So that is the time where things from the new year will begin piling up. SBF, our favorite fraudster, will not see a second trial, mainly because he's already been convicted on the first one. And remember, he's been convicted on 7 counts already, each carrying up a maximum of 20 years. So I think in the end, he'll get something like 25, 30 years. And remember, he's going to a federal penitentiary. And generally, people who go to federal penitentiary do not get out on parole. So he's going to be stuck in jail for quite a long time. Now, I think the second batch of accusations against SBF actually stems from his political accusations. Because remember, SBF was a moron, and he did actually say that he donated dark money to the Republicans. Now, he did donate a ton of money to the Democrats, but he said, like, because people would make a big deal of him donating money to the Republicans and he didn't want to deal with that, he donated dark money to them. Of course, unfortunately, he didn't realize, because he's a moron, that that's actually illegal. So they were going to charge him with a bunch of charges on that. But because it's election season and they probably don't want to get some of the candidates on both the Democratic and the Republican side involved and like maybe like sully their name or something, they probably drop the charges on that. So he won't see a second trial. So he won't get the second batch of charges added on to his first batch of charges. But since he's already guilty on his first batch of charges, he's still going to be in jail for a couple of decades. I think like some people have been speculating, perhaps correctly, that they just dropped the charges because they didn't want to see who the money was actually connected to. That could definitely be true. But I think it's kind of like almost a nothing burger to the crypto community at this point, because as long as he goes to jail for a couple of decades, I don't think most people will care. John Deaton and Jeremy Hogan are making a big fuss about it, and they have their right to, because he should be prosecuted. But since he's already been guilty of 7 accounts, I don't think the rest of everyone else is going to pay that much attention. I do want to see the money, though, and I would like to see him get charged. But my main goal was to put him behind bars for a while, just to make a note to the crypto community that if you scam like this, you will be sorry and you will be put behind bars. And that goal has already been achieved. So the rest of it, I'm not quite as interested in. So yeah, he's not really going to be prosecuted on 7 accounts. And I think it is partially due to 11. It is partially due to election season. And they're basically basing the prosecution off his statement that he did donate dark money to some people. Now, they have to I think they have to prove that, and they have to have like actual track the finances and everything. And they might not have that much evidence on these charges, not like they had the evidence on the previous charges where they had both Carolyn Ellison and Gary Wang testify before him. So basically, some people actually said, like, for me, the second trial was less about how much worse things can get for SBF and more about potentially finding more enablers who deserve to be revealed. And you know what? Gary Gensler could have been revealed on this, so I really want them to prosecute this. But at the same time, SBF is already going to be behind bars, and the second trial was not going to be mainly about SBF. So this is basically what it's what's happening. And since he's already trading canned fish in prison, I don't know how much worse things are going to get from him. So in other news, global news, Nvidia might be taking a chunk out of Chinese Bitcoin miners. What do I mean? Because Joe Biden enacted that trade restriction, that the CHIPS Act, which means our best chip equipment cannot go to China. Nvidia is having to make slower GPUs specifically for Xi Jinping and his Chinese minions. That's right. China won't have the best GPUs either to play games or to mine Bitcoin with, or Ethereum. Well, you can't mine Ethereum anymore, or to mine crypto with. So Nvidia might have made it harder for them on that aspect. No one's actually using GPUs to mine Bitcoin. Everyone uses AMP miners. And since you can't really mine Ethereum anymore, I guess it's not really that big of a deal. But Chinese gaming might have taken a serious hit with this, because obviously China wants that new chips technology. I wonder if there's people like that's going to just buy a bunch of like the best GPUs in the United States and then take them back to China just so they can investigate and dissect it. But even if they figure out how Nvidia makes those chips, they don't have the facilities to make them, and they don't actually have the technology to actually make the chip producing parts. So they're kind of out of luck there at this point. But if there were anyone still mining with the GPU miners in China, this should definitely set them back a batch. Now, I don't know if the AMP miners actually use GPU technology, but if the AMP miners actually use GPU technology, they might actually be in trouble as well, because they won't have the best and the greatest chips to compete with. And if they don't have that, they might not be as competitive with the other mining makers out there. I'm not all that knowledgeable on the Bitcoin mining aspect or the Bitcoin mining industry. I don't mine myself. I haven't mined in many, many years because it became unviable for me a long time ago. And I only managed to mine about $100 altogether when I did mine, so it wasn't really worth it for me. I actually blew out a laptop video card. I think it was a 1060i mining, but my computer was under warranty, so I was okay with that at the time. Um, but the thing is, realistically, it just yeah, realistically, like things didn't really don't look all that good for China, and they're going to be suffering a variety of both military and just retail commercial products because of this chips ban, and crypto is just one of those areas that could actually be affected. So that's the news for today. Let me know what you think. Like and subscribe, hit that bell notifications button. Thank you and have a nice day.